The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome back to the Sandy and Toddcast. After a couple of weeks away, we're glad to be here. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we have lots of stuff to catch up on this week on the podcast.
Yeah, doesn't it seem like it's been like forever? It's only been a few weeks, but it does seem like it's been forever.
Yeah.
We were going to be back last week, but last week was kind of tough. And so now we are back.
And for the summer, we've just decided we're going to take a little bit of a different tact with the podcast and basically do a podcast whenever we can. And if there's a week or two when we can't, it's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Right. You know, summer, we always put this, being radio people, we always have had to kind of work around pretty staunch schedules. So, for example, in the summertime, when you're out and you're doing more events and you're doing things, or even you're traveling, you know, it's you still have that idea that you have to be staunchly on schedule because you have to go do this remote or you have to go do this event or this or that. But this summer, we're just going to not think that we have to do that. And
right.
We're going to just record when we're able to record. And, you know, it's a little different during the winter when there's not much going on and you can sit down every week and do it. So we'll still be here. We're going to be here through the whole summer, but just maybe a little less often than once a week. Doesn't mean there's less crazy shit going on in our lives that we can talk about. It just means that, you know, maybe we won't talk to you guys each and every week for the summer, at least.
So let's get everybody caught up on really what this podcast is all about, which is trying to connect with the other side. And I think that's one thing that we all have in common in life is that, and we talk about this on the Haunted State docuseries, and that is we all lose people we love. Like our lives could be totally different in so many different ways. We could be not from the United States. We could be from the South. We could be from the North. We could be from a rich family. We could be from a poor family. We could have gay parents. We could have straight parents. We could have only parents, single parents. But the one thing that we all share in our life is we're going to lose people we love to what we know as death. And I've gone through it a couple of times. You've had some loss in your life with your grandparents and your friend Trey, but it definitely hit close to home in the last couple of weeks when you lost your mom.
Yeah.
Who's been on the show before?
I get a little teary-eyed.
Yeah, she's been on the show before, and if you want to have some fun, you can go back and listen to those early episodes with her.
Those were great when we were talking about our life as a mafia family.
That's right.
You know, that kind of thing. So my mom was a pip. She was hilarious. And last Friday, May 31st, I did lose her. And my mother had a rough life. My mother had a very rough life. And so I dedicated, especially the last 15 years or so, to just trying to give her the best life. We would travel with her. We would take her all kinds of places. She loved the water. She loved the ocean. And so anytime we would go to Cape Cod or Maine or even Vermont, she loved camping in Vermont. We took her camping for a week and we went up to the Thousand Islands with her and rented a place on the water, all kinds of fun stuff. But she really loved the water and stuff. And so we tried to give her a great life. You know, and she did pass. She made it to 75. She smoked like a chimney.
Yep.
She would even lie to her doctor. My mother was very stubborn.
They always are. They always are.
my mother would do whatever she wanted. And from the time she was 14, she smoked cigarettes. And back then, of course, they didn't know what we know today about smoking. And many times her doctors told her not to smoke. And so eventually she increased. And she was smoking 24/7.
So did you say she increased because they were telling her not to smoke?
Well, I don't know if it's specifically that, but then she would lie to them and tell them that she hardly smoked at all, which everybody knew was a lie. But, you know,
Right.
She had COPD, she had emphysema, she had asthma. She had a lot of health and medical problems for many, 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 many years. About 15 years ago, the doctor gave her about 5 years, and she made it to 75, God bless her. So, it wasn't a surprise that she had passed. She had kind of gone downhill in the past year or so. The fight was starting to leave, but it's always shocking and it's always hard. And I think, Todd, I would like to do an episode down the road, a full episode about grief and about dealing with it, not just for the Sandy and Toddcast idea, but for the EMPATHECARY podcast idea. Sure. And dealing with grief and working through it. Right now, I'm not ready for that, but I will say that I've been very, very busy the past week, taking care of stuff and coordinating and doing things. So I haven't really had a chance to just sit down and let the grief flood me yet. And it's coming, but I haven't had that much of a chance. What I will say is a few things. What I will say is that being who I am and having, we were kind of half joking about this yesterday when we were talking. I don't know whether to call them psychic gifts at this point in my life. I've leveled up quite crazily in the past few years in my gifts. I'm now at a point where I haven't been before, and it's been happening over the past few years. And so I don't know if they're gifts. I would call them abilities at this point. I'm still trying to sort through everything and kind of figure it out, which I know I'll never 100% do. But at some point in my life, I might consider them gifts. Right now, I consider them a work in progress. I'm grateful in a lot of ways that I have them, and I tell you why, because with all of the experiences that I've had, not just the past few years, but the past 10 years, my life, I am comforted in the knowledge that there is more once we pass. There is something beyond our physical death. That I am 100% sure of, and it is comforting. I'm also comforted in the knowledge that my mother is no longer in physical, mental, or emotional pain. That's very comforting to me. One more thing that I can say is that I highly encourage everyone, no matter what age you are. Mine's been in place for over 20 years, since I was in my 30s. I highly encourage everyone to sign, if they're so inclined, a DNR, which means do not resuscitate. And I do encourage greatly everyone to nominate a healthcare proxy. Because this, I will say, we tried for years to get my mother to sign one. My mother didn't want to think about death. And we tried for years to get her to sign a DNR, to sign me, to put me as her healthcare proxy. She wanted me as her healthcare proxy. She never signed. We tried for years to get her to even not necessarily do a full will, because my mother didn't have any real assets, but she had a lot of stuff that she had collected that she wanted to give to people. And we Tried to encourage her to write it down and get it at least notarized. She never did that. The best gift that you can give to your loved ones is to do that. Because what happens is, if you don't, sometimes there's not enough clarity to know what your loved ones want. I was very fortunate that in New York State, the oldest child, when there is no spouse, and my father is still alive, but my father and mother have been separated for over 20 years. When there is no actual spouse, the oldest child in New York State, by law, is the healthcare proxy automatically. And I'm very fortunate that I knew her wishes with clarity so that I could make those decisions. And as horrific as it is, even when you know what they want, not knowing for sure what they want is beyond horrific. Because then you have to live with that. Whatever decisions you make or don't make, you're living with that for the rest of your life. I am thankful that I knew what she wanted. And I have tried in the past week to do everything according to her wishes. So I highly encourage everyone to do that. It takes 5 minutes to nominate your healthcare proxy, to sign your DNR if that's what you choose, do not resuscitate, and to give it to your doctor. 5 minutes. That's all it takes. So I highly recommend that, because you don't want to leave your loved ones in a state where they're always questioning whether they did the right thing.
Right.
So those are the things I will say, that I am comforted in the knowledge that she is there somewhere, because she's so stubborn she wouldn't give up anyways. She's out there somewhere. That she's no longer in pain of any kind, and that I did the right thing. So that's what I want to say on that, and then we'll go through a whole episode down the road sometime when it's time, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But in the meantime, weird things have been going on yet again in the studio, Todd.
You've been having this happen for a while now, on and off. It's not something that's consistent. And it's funny to me because listen, I'm a true skeptic, right?
Me too.
And so we were actually having a discussion. Some of the things that happen in your studio there, in your space, in your sandy cave.
Yes, my she cave.
Your she cave. There's some little figurines of Scooby and Shaggy that seem to topple over, and they're laying on the floor, and there's this ornament. I guess I look at it as, in some cases, it would be like a sun catcher that's in the window, but maybe it's not exactly a sun catcher, but that's fallen down several times.
Yes. And it all seems to center around this gun cabinet. And I know we laugh about why is there a gun cabinet in your studio, right? But the thing is, the gun cabinet was actually there first. Yeah, and I had to go around it because when we installed the gun cabinet, it's literally bolted to the wall in several places. So that gun cabinet wasn't going to come out. So I actually, built up my studio around a gun cabinet. And we laugh, but that thing is about as solid as it gets. I'll tell you right now, it will not move. All of it kind of started a few years ago, 2 years ago, when my friend Trey passed away.
Right.
And that's when it all really started. And this was interesting. It started before I even was aware that he had passed, which is strange. Consciously aware, though, Todd. Let's put it that way. I look back on it, and I actually had texted him like the day right after it happened. So to see if he was okay, which I hadn't heard from him in a while. So I was just kind of almost being sarcastic when I did that. And, but it did. It started before I even was consciously aware that he had passed. And a candle would just fall over. It was on my floor on the rug, and it would just fall over. And it happened a few times. And that's what got us started with this whole thing, this journey. And so for 2 years now, we've been discussing this. And I'm one of those people that I really have to, before I wholeheartedly put my belief in something, I have to consider every other option that it could be, or it's going to eat at me. It's going to eat at me, because I have to make sure that what I believe is true. Right?
Right.
So we've been doing this for a couple of years now, going back and forth talking about this. You and I were actually recording a podcast episode once when the cord got pulled out of the plug got pulled out of the wall.
That's true.
And we went black. My computer went off. Everything stopped. Lots of weird things. It kind of, when we had this full total solar eclipse, a couple months ago?
Yeah.
It kind of really went to a head, I guess you could say. I was having for 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The eclipse was on Monday. I was having things being knocked over, literally launched off the cabinet, like left and right, at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times for 3 days. Then it just stopped for a couple weeks. Didn't think anything of it after that. You know, it was kind of a big thing. I'm going to sound like I'm 85, but it was a big hullabaloo. And we were talking about it, and we were all,
Wasn't that an Elvis movie, Hullabaloo?
Was it? No, Blue Hawaii, I think, was the Elvis movie, Todd.
All right.
And but we've been going back and forth, and now it's just every once in a while, it'll just do it. And we did our Spirit Box session and got some amazing things from the Spirit Box session, right, about a month ago. And so we kind of came to the conclusion that it could possibly be the energy that my crystals give off that attracts these spirits to this. It's obviously been ramping up. It's obviously been happening more often. Is it because I'm more conscious of it now, maybe, that it adds? We've been trying to throw around, you and I and Dave, some theories as to what could actually be going on. So a couple weeks ago, sitting here, doing work at the computer, and the gun cabinet's to my right, and all of a sudden I hear a noise. And in the movies where, like, the kind of the funny movies too, where, like, you hear a noise and you know what it is, but you don't want to look right away.
Right.
So you just kind of stare at the screen. And then, so I'm staring at the screen. I knew what was going on. And I suddenly, like, turned to my right. And sure enough, Scooby was not only laying on his side, but the ornament was on the floor. Both of them at the same exact time. Like they were in conjunction with each other. That was a couple weeks ago. So I immediately got on the Spirit Box. Immediately did a short session. And got some great stuff. And we'll go over that maybe next week. In next week's episode, we'll go over the results of that, because I thought that was very interesting. Even Dave, who's just as skeptical as you and I are, his eyes opened up when he heard it, and he said, wow, that's really clear. I can hear that really clearly. And have Dave say that is like rare. So, because Dave wears hearing aids too. So for him to hear something that clearly, it's saying a lot. So we'll talk about that in the future. But you and I were throwing around a few theories yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you asked me if we could talk about, my mom and the theories and stuff like that. And I said, yes. Yeah, I think it would be great. I think we should talk about it, because a lot of the stuff that you threw out at me is stuff that I had actually been thinking about myself, things that had crossed my mind, possibilities of what's going on. So the first one we talked about was that you said, well, I do believe that you've got spirits coming in and out, right?
Right.
Whether they're coming for acknowledgement or coming for help. I can say that there was one time when it felt really heavy in here. And I did sort of do a little meditation, and I did sort of call on St. Michael. Again, I don't say crossing over because I don't know that necessarily that's what I'm doing. I think I look at it more as I'm just having someone come to enlighten them that they have that free choice. They don't have to be rooted in one place. They do have free will to be able to come and go. I think a lot of spirits, once they've passed, they kind of bind themselves to locations through either anger or sadness or fear or whatever it may be, unfinished business, whatever it may be. I think they bind themselves. I don't think any spirit is physically bound to a location. That's why my big theory is that, and I tried to prove this last summer, but it didn't work out the way I had hoped, not because it wasn't possible, but because when I was trying to contact essentially the same spirit in two locations, there was a Civil War general who was buried in Troy, New York, who I had quite the K2 conversation with last summer in June. And then a couple months later, we went down to Gettysburg, where he has a monument. As I was trying to communicate with him in Gettysburg, there was a bus tour came by, and everybody got out. There was no way I was going to be able to communicate with this general. And we were on our way home, so that wasn't going to work. But we're going back to Gettysburg next summer, so I'm going to try it again. But my theory is that they can be in more than one place, that they're not bound to locations. But I think what I can do to help them is help give them that understanding that they don't have to be there if they don't want to, that they have that choice.
I look at it as this, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but it's almost like being a psychologist, meaning if you're in life and you're struggling, right, and you don't know why you're struggling, there could be things going on in your life. It could be work-related, relationship-related, depression, anxiety, all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not necessarily educated to understand and always deal with that stuff on our own. So we go seek help. We see a doctor, we see a therapist, we see whatever. And I kind of feel like your she cave is almost like a doctor's office, in that you have patients coming to see you for various reasons. And it could be somebody that you're connected to, a relative from way back. It could be you're connected to them as a real close friend, but it could also be people you have no idea who they are or why they're walking in the door. They're just coming to you because they see the sign on the door. Dr. Sandy Jean or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I really think a lot of it is the visitors you're getting may or may not necessarily be connected to you directly, but they are connected to needing some sort of assistance
and guidance. I tend to agree with you. That's beautifully put. And I never thought of that analogy, but that's beautiful. And I do think that that's the case. After we did that session, that spirit box session on the show, and I heard what was going on, and these were names that I didn't know anybody by these names. So your idea is probably right on. Then that heaviness I was feeling was much lighter, and I didn't smudge. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary once I called upon St. Michael. And I use St. Michael because I was born and raised Catholic. So even though I'm not a Catholic church person,
Right.
or follower or anything like that. I've still held on to some of my beliefs, my Christian beliefs over the years. And I hold on to them tightly. And so I asked St. Michael to come and help them and guide them and, enlighten them on what's going on. And I think that is one of my, I don't know if duties, jobs in life, is to facilitate that. And so when you say that theory, I tend to agree with you on it, and I think it's a beautiful way to look at it. And so I do think that a lot of this is that. I do think that almost, like you said before, I do think that almost they know that this is a safe space. This is a place that they can come, whether it's to quote unquote renew their energy, to gain some insight into where they are, what they're doing, what they want to happen.
Comfort, rest.
Acknowledgement.
Yep.
All of that. I do think you're right. And I've sent you so many videos of things of like at night, I'll like take videos in here. And like the orbs are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And nobody has that much dust in there. I mean, I dust this place a lot. So it's not like there's like, dust storms going on in here. The amount of orb activity is absolutely crazy sometimes. And other times it's quieter. So that kind of shows me some stuff too. But we also had some other ideas of what's going on in here. And one of the really, because the big thing, Todd, with me is why, it's actually funny, why the Scooby-Doo and why the ornament?
Yeah.
And why the computer at that one point in time, and why the candle? Now, the candle is no longer there. I put the candle in the closet. And that's when, after I put the candle in the closet, is when the other stuff started happening. And my crystals don't get moved. Nothing gets knocked over. Nothing with any girth or weight to it gets knocked over. So it's really been driving me crazy. Not that I need to know, but I kind of need to know. Like, why are they choosing these objects,
right.
Scooby-Doo, to manipulate like they do? And I'm telling you, this thing gets launched. Sometimes if I put it far enough back, it just gets knocked over. Sometimes it literally gets thrown off of the cabinet. And I'll find it like 3 feet away from the cabinet. And it's not just when I'm not in the room. It's when I'm sitting here in the room. So one of the things that has crossed my mind, and you mentioned it yesterday, is the idea that maybe I'm doing it. That my psychic abilities are creating this. When I get overly tense or stressed or excited, that I'm doing it. I've thought about that myself. Am I doing it? Am I putting those words through the spirit box without even knowing what I'm doing? Am I manipulating those objects without even realizing it? In my gut, I don't feel that way. And I tell you why. It's possible. Everything's possible because none of us know the answers to anything for sure. These are all hypotheses. But in my gut, I feel like I've looked back. I've kind of kept a diary a little bit here and there. We were talking about this yesterday. Kind of kept a diary of when it happens. It's not always at times where emotion is high. Sometimes I'll go days without even remembering that it's happening to me because nothing will happen for days at a time. And my thought process is, well, I'm always stressed. So if that were the case, it would be happening all day or every day or every other day or something like that. It hasn't. it doesn't fit that pattern for me. I don't sit here and, meditate and concentrate. Okay. And I will say this.
You tried it.
Yesterday, I tried it. I was like just staring at it, like, trying to will it to move. It's just not happening. I just don't think that it's possible, but I don't think that's it. The other thing we were talking about was that maybe, let's use this analogy. We've talked about this before. You're in an investigation. You have fresh batteries in your equipment, your K2 meter, for example. Just put the fresh battery in, tested it, everything's working well. 10 minutes into your investigation, the batteries are dead. And the theory is that the spirits are draining that energy to help themselves manifest or interact or whatever it happens to be, communicate. And it's happened to me many times in investigations, or my teammates. It's happened to them many times in an investigation, not just me. Could that be what's happening? Could that be part of what's happening? Are they drawn to me because of the energy I give off, because of the energy in the studio, but my personal energy? Are they drawn to that? Are they using my psychic energy as sort of their way to manifest more? That's a possibility too. Which kind of ties in with the idea that they're drawn here as a safe space because there's the energy from the crystals, there's my energy. They feel more comfortable, they feel safer here because this is the safe space to be. They need the help, they need the guidance, they need whatever. I kind of am more inclined to believe in that whole package of what's going on. And the interesting thing is, too, Todd, that it doesn't happen like every day. Which kind of fits into our theory of they're coming when they need to come. Mm-hmm. When they're not just standing in line one right after the other. This would be happening to me every day. It's the ones who really need to be here. So those are just some theories we've been throwing around. What is that? What you think, or are you? I just don't feel like I'm necessarily doing it.
I don't think you're doing it. I do think
subconsciously.
Right. I don't think, but I do think when things are rough in your life and you're going through anxious cycles, it seems to happen more frequently. But I don't think it's because your energy is going over and knocking over Scooby. You are focused on those 2 or 3 items in your room.
Right.
And have basically also called out to the universe, so-and-so, if you're here, do something, maybe knock Scooby over or whatever. So you have opened up that that request. I do think, though, when you are anxious and you're going through things, and maybe when you're, especially when you're looking to connect, that's when things happen.
Yeah. I agree. It's interesting. Like, it's almost like when I'm anxious, I'm creating more of my energy.
Of course you are.
That they can feed off of easier.
You're like a Tesla coil.
Yeah. And I don't mean feed off of in a negative way. I mean, that's what they can use to pull themselves in. And I will say this. I have never in my home, and I set my boundaries. Believe me, I continually set boundaries for my home, my studio, and the land that I live on. There is no negative energy allowed. There is no this, that. I will say that this house, especially the studio, is like Fort Knox when it comes to negative energy. And all this time so far, I can't say without a shadow of a doubt I would never have to deal with something more negative. But without a shadow, I mean, I have everything. My window, my doorway has selenite above it. I have a witch's ball hanging over the door with all the special herbs and things like that.
That poor guy.
I I know, I'm crazy.
Isn't that more of a warlock ball? Do you get it? Come on, that was a joke.
I get it.
A witch's ball. I said that poor guy.
Yeah, okay. I know. But yeah.
It's walking around with one ball.
I never. What a dork. I never feel negative in here. I just don't. I never feel. There's always like just a fresh, and that's why I can tell the difference too when I feel like something's going on, because it does feel a little heavier than it normally does. And after I do a little, kind of releasing type of stuff, it usually will clear up again. And I'm fine with them coming. I am more than happy to have them as my quote unquote guests, patients, whatever you would refer them as long as it's a positive energy. I am more than happy to allow them to rest, to seek help. But again, I set my boundaries. You're not allowed to be here if you have any negative energy attached to you. You're not allowed to be here if you're not allowed to interrupt any of my daily goings on. I have work to do. I have a life to live. But you're more than welcome to be here if you need to be here. And that's the way it is. But yeah, and one more before we wrap up. One more idea that I had that I threw by you yesterday. So again, why the Scooby and why the ornament? And Dave said the ornament idea well yesterday. He said, well, those suction cups are sometimes kind of iffy with things. And I said, you are 100% correct. I said, I do go by them every couple days and I give it a push in so that it's strong again. But, they can wear over time. So my whole thought of why those two items, I literally stood, I think I told you this yesterday, because we were voice messaging back and forth. I literally stood for the 18,000th time in front of the gun cabinet. And I pounded on the right side over and over again. And I pounded on the left side over and over again. And the front and the top and the bottom. And the wall on the left side and the wall on the right side. And I stomped, and I'm not a small woman. I jumped up and down in front of this thing.
There's shit flying off the walls downstairs on the first floor. Books are falling over. Yeah.
I've had things fall off the wall before. The wall, but I have never had one thing. I have like a coffin-shaped shelf on the back of the gun cabinet with my Addams Family Funko Pops. And I have a Casper the Friendly Ghost Funko Pop on the very top. Those have never fallen. I have a Ghostbusters car and a Scooby-Doo Mystery Machine. Neither one has the brakes on them, so they can free roll anytime. Shaggy is just standing there. Scooby will not fall over when I'm pounding 100 times what a normal daily life would, how that would affect it.
Right.
Walking, closing a door, or anything. 100 times more pressure. And that Scooby will not freaking fall down. And neither will the ornament. The ornament won't come off the cabinet. So my theory is this, and I want you guys to let me know what your theory is on this and what you think about my idea. My idea is that they're choosing the things that are the lightest in the room to concentrate on. So the ornament, yes, the ornament is stuck with the suction cup, but it's also very light, and just slight pressure can knock it down. If it can go weeks without falling. It's gone months without falling. I got it last September, and it wasn't until January that it started getting knocked down. So it can literally go months. So can the Scooby. The Scooby was there for months before all of this started as well. So I'm wondering if they're drawn to the objects that are easiest for them to manipulate. My crystals are heavy. They don't get manipulated. All kinds of things I have in this room can't get manipulated. But these two light, not unstable objects, but just lighter objects, easily manipulated, are the ones that are being affected. So my thought is this. They're choosing those things because they are the easiest things. So I'd love to know what everybody thinks about this, because this is just an ongoing thing in my life. So I would love opinions and thoughts suggestions, experiments we should try, different things. I now have Scooby laying down on top of the cabinet with just his head off the side of the cabinet to see if he gets shoved off in the next few days.
Interesting.
So now we're waiting to see if anything is that. Or is it the fact that he has a much better center of gravity, so they won't be able to do anything with it? I don't know.
I'm not saying that I don't agree with you. I do. But I also think the fact that these two items are the focus of the most movement, just it, you know.
I know.
It's just these two are two things. Like everybody knows, hey, if you go see this witch Sandy and you're going and you want to prove that you're there, two things that you got to do. You got to, knock Scooby over and you got to knock that off the wall. That's what you do. That's how she knows that something's going on. Yeah.
It's totally possible. Like, I am not ruling anything out at this point. It's obvious that it's happening. It's obvious that there's communication attempts going on. But I'm just so fascinated with the idea. You're right. Of why those objects? Is it that those are the things that they say, okay, this is how you let her know you're here? It's become that type of thing. I don't know. It's fascinating. And it's an ongoing mystery. And so we'll see. We'll see. But I do feel as if at some point my mom will come to me. I did give her a word. I had joked with her a year or so ago about, Mom, we got to think up a word when you pass.
Right.
We never did. And so when we were in the hospital, in the emergency room last week, when I was saying goodbye, I gave her a word. And I won't say what the word is just now. It's not probably the easiest word. It was the first word that came to my mind. I don't know. I know deep down she heard me. She wasn't cognitive at the time outwardly, but I know deep down she heard me. So we're going to see. At some point, I'm going to see if she'll come and talk to me. We'll see. We'll see. And next week, let's talk about my visit to the memorial where my friend Trey passed away.
Yeah.
Last month when Dave and I went down, because that was interesting too. That was very interesting too. So lots to talk about coming up in the next few weeks. Again, we are going to be a little bit more loose with our recording in the summertime until the fall when things quiet down, and then we'll get back into a little bit more of a schedule. But next week we should be around, and I would love to hear any of your thoughts on what's going on here. Any suggestions you might have, because we're all just going through this together at this point. We're all figuring this out as we go along together. So let's see what we can come up with and see if anybody has any ideas or thoughts. I do have a couple of questions that have been thrown out to me recently that I want to go over too. We can talk about that too. So lots going on. Lots going on.
I just want to back up briefly because the thought that your energy was fueling things to happen, not necessarily making them happen, but fueling them,
right,
made a lot of sense to me, because of when my mother passed away, my sisters and I were having a ton of stuff happen as well. And yes. I don't believe it was my mom doing it, but I do believe that our energy was making things happen. This was the first major death in our family. Right. Things were very, we knew what she wanted. We knew all that stuff. We knew she was sick. We knew she would be passing, but it's the first time you lose a parent, and there's so much to go through. And then you have another parent that will need extra care. You have to think through that. So it was a very crazy time.
Right.
And we were having stuff happen too. So that again, just kind of lends some background to why I believe, while you're not specifically doing it,
right,
your heightened energy, anxiety, whatever, does fuel that kind of stuff.
And let's not forget that you and your sisters also have some level of abilities.
Right.
Which, again, goes to your theory of, Are they using me sort of like a battery in a piece of equipment? Are they using that
right
to fuel and manifest? And by manifest, I don't mean even visually. I just mean in general.
Yep.
Communicate. Was it your mother? Not necessarily. I don't believe that it's my mother at this point. I have no reason to believe that. But I also don't believe that all of it is Trey. In the beginning, I thought a lot of it was because of those amazing spirit box sessions we had.
Right.
But I don't believe that anymore. So yes, with your sisters and you, and why not? Do you know, Todd, before we let everybody go, do you know if there are any other members of your family who might have any sort of abilities?
Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think I believe my grandmother had abilities. I don't believe my grandmother had any idea what was going on, but I do believe she had abilities. My mother, I don't know. I don't think my mother did, but I don't think it necessarily has to be everybody in a family.
No,
but that would make sense.
The other thing is just like anything else,
right?
We can all run a marathon, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can all do that unless we have some major physical constraints, but we can all do that. It's easier for some people, and because it's easier for some people, they pursue it, and the rest of us who don't want to work that hard never pursue running a marathon. So it's not that everybody doesn't have some abilities. It's just some people have it a little bit easier to bring those to fruition, and they've taken the time and energy to do it. Others,
Right. That's a great point. I don't know. So that makes perfect sense to me that you and your sisters would all experience something. And then as you move through your grief process, it died down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. And once we finally calmed down and kind of got beyond some stuff, then other things calmed down as well. So
everything is energy. We give off energy. We take in energy. We create energy. So why couldn't we have a symbiote? I've been waiting probably 40 years since high school to use this word. Why can't we have a symbiotic relationship with the spirits?
Right? Well, you're right.
Right?
I have to play something. I didn't ask you if I could do this before.
Oh, boy.
But I want to play this because this is how I will remember your mom. All right?
Okay.
Check this out.
Sweet Caroline, boom, boom, boom. Good times never seem so good.
There you go.
You got to send me that. I don't think I have that.
I also have this. I also have this.
My vagina, my boobs. That has nothing to do with my mother. Todd.
I know, but still. And then I also have.
Listen, it's a good show. You don't know what a good show is. So, screw you, Todd. I have to say this. I love you so much, and I am so grateful you are in my life.
Yeah.
4.5 years of love. My vagina, my boobs. Now, can you imagine we're hoping that you can get out here in September? Wouldn't that be great? We could do some episodes live again, like
That'd be
when
great.
we were on Washington Island. So
That would be great.
Let's hope.
All right. Until next time or next week or whenever it is, we can't wait to visit with you again. So until then, bye.
Bye.